Maka's guides.
Hey guys, Maka here with a new video where I'll be talking about my top 6 most disappointing gaming experiences of 2019. Now, I want to be pretty sensitive when making this video. I'm not the type of person to hate on games. Making games can be hard, and sometimes the dreams and imagination of a developer don't quite pan out. With that being said, 2019 was an interesting year where a lot of games came out and did not meet the expectations of the audience they were made for, or in this video's case, my personal expectations. Also, it should be pointed out that just because a game was disappointing, it doesn't always mean that that game was bad. There are a lot of reasons that we can get disappointed with a game, and I will go over each game in my list individually and talk about the reasons that I was personally disappointed. Obviously, you can agree or disagree with my choices, and I'm sure we'll have a civilized discussion in the YouTube comments down below. So starting off my list at the number 6 position, I'm gonna have Metro Exodus, which of all games on my list is probably the best one. Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light were some of my favorite games of the last generation, and we waited a really long time to get a new entry in the next generation of consoles with Metro Exodus. Now, there were a lot of reasons why we waited so long, and they were all valid. However, with that being said, I thought that the series took a couple of steps forward, but also took a couple of steps back. On the plus side, we got an incredibly good-looking game, both on console and on PC. We also got a game with amazing audio design and some of the best AI I've seen in a game, as long as it was working correctly. We also got that unique Metro playstyle where you had a little bit of survival and a little bit of stealth without either one feeling like it was overpowering the game in terms of its genre. However, the game disappointed me personally by a couple of the new additions, including the kind of open world levels, both on Volga and Casper. Although it was a cool idea and there were linear sections to those open world levels, a lot of them did feel quite empty, and I think they lacked a little bit in terms of their design. Another big problem with Metro Exodus is that it didn't quite feel 100% ready. The load times were beyond terrible, which made it feel like the game maybe wasn't optimized for the consoles it was running on, and the game was also incredibly buggy, with crashes happening quite often. On one hand, I really admire what Metro Exodus did. It took an already established series and kept true to its initial ideas and what made that game unique. The game is highly ambitious, and the world and atmosphere are top-notch. The attention to detail in the game is also astounding, and there are great leaps with things like lighting and weather. But on the other hand, the open world levels are just not as enjoyable as the linear ones, and the long load times and bug crashes really take you out of the experience. Additionally, I think it has weak English voice acting, and the mute protagonist can sometimes be a little bit weird when they're trying to tell the story. To me, it just feels like some missed potential to be a truly must-play, genre-defining game, and for that reason, I was a little disappointed with it, coming in for number 6. In the next spot, we have a game called the Blackout Club, which you may or may not have heard of, and the reason it is in my list is because I first started this game in 4-player co-op, and after the first 2 hours, I had an absolutely amazing time with my friends. However, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th hour were all basically the same thing, and the game got extremely repetitive extremely quickly, and unfortunately implemented time gating through leveling and progression, which I thought was a little bit unnecessary. The first 1 or 2 times you play on a certain level can be really fun and exciting as you discover new paths and interact with new enemy types, but the 4th, 5th, and 6th time are just not that fun. I also ended up getting a little bit frustrated with how the game progresses as you play. It gets a lot harder, but it doesn't get more difficult in the sense that it feels like it requires more skill. Instead, things start feeling more unfair, and the mechanics of the game feel too unreliable in order for you to feel confident with the moves you're making as you're playing. Long story short, the first 1 to 2 hours of this game feels really great and promising. However, the following hours don't really quite deliver on the ideas from the beginning of the game. And for that reason, I was really disappointed because I thought this could be an incredible game had they tuned things a little bit differently and or even got some sort of license with the game like Stranger Things. It would have been a really great fit. In at the number 4 position, I have Grid, which is a game published by Codemasters, one of my favorite publishers. They make incredible racing games. However, in my opinion, Grid was very disappointing. Now don't worry, I talk about another one of their games from 2019 in tomorrow's video, which is the most underappreciated games, kind of the reverse category. But for me, Grid was not that great, and I didn't think it strived to do new and exciting things to the racing genre, and it felt very bland and boring to me. I thought the graphics and audio in the game were just okay, and I thought that the game really lacked in terms of its car list. Although there was a lot of variety, a lot of the car list felt uninspired to me, and none of the cars felt exciting to drive or were dream cars that I've always wanted to drive. I also don't know if this is the case, but a lot of the things in this game feel directly recycled from the 2008 version of the game, so I almost felt like I was playing the same game from way back when, and even the menu from the game feels like it's straight out of a game from 15 years ago. I just think the game lacked any semblance of innovation or creativity. It ended up being a little bit too boring for my taste, and I thought it could have been a lot better, so those are the reasons I was a little disappointed. Next up, I have Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and this is going to be a very interesting topic of discussion, as I don't believe that the review scores that this game got were deserved. I actually think this game is a lot better than most reviewers said it was. However, I also thought this game could have been magnificent, and that it definitely wasn't. I'm going to start off with the things I actually liked about the game, which might be a longer list than you imagine. I actually think the game had really great graphics and good audio, and some of the ideas seemed potentially interesting. Additionally, if you play the game as a stealth game and not as an action game, it is well designed in terms of its map and mission layout. It can really give you that classic Ghost Recon feeling. I also thought they did a really good job with co-op implementation, and I also liked how you could virtually go into any building you saw. There was a lot of detail with the map. Now I'm going to end this segment with what I think the game did not do well, which hopefully won't be too long of a section. Number 1, I think that Ubisoft tried to incorporate too many aspects of all of its other games and inject them into Ghost Recon unnecessarily. For example, most obviously, the gear score that you would get when you would loot and shoot your way through levels. Additionally, the story is exceptionally boring, and the script and voice acting is some of the worst I've ever heard. You would definitely not expect that level of quality from a Ubisoft title. It also felt to me like certain parts of this game were made by completely different people who never spoke to each other. There's this amazing, giant open world, but driving in the vehicles feels completely unnecessary and so unfun that I don't know why anyone would ever do it. You're just going to end up hopping in a chopper and then flying to where you want to go. You also have survival elements, but they just don't mesh well with the open world style of the game, and a lot of the mechanics seem gimmicky and unnecessary. They don't feel like they have a significant factor in the actual moment-to-moment gameplay. The idea of breaking your leg and having to hobble through the rest of the mission sounds like it could be a lot of fun, but what it ends up doing is just making you hide behind a building for 20 seconds as you wait for your character to bandage it up. At the end of the day, Ghost Recon Breakpoint just feels like a mishmash of ideas, and none of them are executed to perfection. It's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And it also didn't help that the game was a buggy mess when it first came out and felt completely unfinished. Additionally, there's also microtransactions in the game which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but that is a topic for a completely another video. I don't want to get into that, but it definitely did not help the game's image. At the end of the day, I was just disappointed because I expected a lot more of this game, especially after how much I loved Ghost Recon Wildlands, and I thought they really could have done something with some of the ideas they presented if they just let them cook in the oven for a little longer. Next up in the number 2 position, I have Crackdown 3, and I'm sure that's going to be a very controversial pick on this channel. However, I stand by my statement that I don't think Crackdown is a good game. Sure, it can be a fun game, and you can spend a lot of hours enjoying the world and jumping around. However, I think it lacks a lot in its design and fails on taking the series to a new height, no pun intended. Personally, from the moment I played Crackdown 3, the game already felt outdated to me. Crackdown 2 came out in 2010, and Crackdown 3 was announced all the way back in 2014, 5 years before it came out. When you wait that long for a game, your expectations start to grow, and especially with the things we were shown with cloud-based destruction and the way some of the buildings would crumble, I really thought this would be an innovative experience that could potentially lead to a new era of gaming. However, we didn't get any of that. Now, when a game is in development for this long, it usually points to a lot of development issues, which obviously this game had. However, it was just disappointing to see that after all this time, we basically got a rehash of an old game with less things to do. The game was extremely repetitive and lacked any semblance of creativity. And don't even get me started on the multiplayer mode called Wrecking Zone. Now, the game does have a few things going for it, obviously. Is it fun to run around the map and grab agility orbs? Sure. Is the barrier to entry super low because the game is on Xbox Game Pass? Yes. With that being said, though, I can't help but feel disappointed, as I thought this game had more potential, and I really wanted them to do something with this franchise, but it almost feels like it was taken to the back of the barn, if you know what I mean. Last but certainly not least, my number 1 most disappointing game of 2019 is none other than Wolfenstein Youngblood. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. In 2014, we got the incredible Wolfenstein The New Order, one of my favorite games on this generation of console. The next year, we got Wolfenstein The Old Blood, which didn't feel like quite a full game, but was kind of marketed as a standalone expansion. Then we had Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus in 2017, which I think took a step back but was still a great game. However, in 2019, we got the ultra disappointing, or uber disappointing, Wolfenstein Youngblood. I don't really know where to start with this one. Obviously, I had pretty high expectations. The recent Wolfenstein games were usually pretty good, and the idea of a game designed around co-op sounded like a lot of fun. With that being said, I think Wolfenstein was really good at one thing, and that was designing levels that had a start point and an end point, and then allowing you to proceed through a campaign. We threw all of that out the window for Wolfenstein Youngblood, which is an open world game with leveling and progression. If the main premise of a game is that the game is a co-op game and can only be played in co-op even if you play with AI, then it should feel like the game is designed in a way where everything has to be done in co-op. But it doesn't feel like that at all. In fact, I can't remember any parts of the game where co-op felt like a 100% necessary game mechanic. Also, this game has what I like to call pseudo-open worldness. It's the idea of an open world, but then when you actually want to go anywhere you want or do anything you want, the game stops you from doing that because of one reason or another. Maybe you can't reach a certain area because you don't have a certain gadget, or maybe the enemies are so high of a level that they instantly kill you, making it pretty much impossible to do what you want. Now, eventually you will get that gadget that opens up that next room, or level up high enough to take on that difficult enemy. But then you're just going back through areas you've already been, and it doesn't feel like a reward at all. We also lost a lot of the badass feeling of Wolfenstein, where you could dual wield any gun, and you would never have to worry about ammo. This game takes a step back in that direction as well. To me, I was just really disappointed to see a series that I love so much be taken so many steps back and be given so many unnecessary treatments and facelifts that the game felt completely different, but also in no way better. And that's that. Those are my top 6 most disappointing gaming experiences of 2019. You may agree, you may disagree, it's okay. However, I would like to thank you so much for watching the video. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, maybe you can share with a friend. And a super special thank you to everyone on Patreon for supporting the show. Special thanks to Double O. Hopefully I see you guys soon. We will have lots more countdown videos to come. Nonetheless, that is it for me for now. Peace.